Joshua, we have burnt sand. Lots of burnt sand.
And no, do we pay a lot of money for that burnt sand, Henry?
So the question to the audience is, why would you want to pay money for burnt sand like we have?
Guys, welcome to Midway USA. I'm Josh, this is Henry of 9-Hole Reviews, and here in front of you, you see a number of high power optics. Anything above and beyond that normal LPVO category, right? We're talking about stuff that's purpose-built for more precision-oriented stuff, whether that's precision carbine, large frame guns, bolt guns, or anything out there that, well, you're really trying to flex your precision on, right?
Well, so the question comes down to when you're choosing glass for your rifle, why would you choose to buy one of these instead of 7 of these?
You could outfit your whole fleet of rifles with those.
So why? Why is that though? Because this is a question that we all asked as we got into shooting long range.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to what feature sets are important to you as a user. The feature sets that somebody who is just going to go take the rifle out and shoot 100-yard paper at their local range, or take it out for a hunt with max distance like 150, 200 yards, those feature sets are going to be wildly different than the feature sets that I want on this large frame gas gun that I'm trying to push over 1,000 and be able to snap back and forth between 300 and 700 and 1,200. And those feature sets have costs that come with them.
In the past, especially when I first got into shooting, I'd always heard old timers tell me, now, Henry, you should always pay twice the amount of money that you spent on your rifle on your optic. And I will say that as time has progressed, I think the technology and the products that optic manufacturers have produced have actually gotten better for cheaper. Money you would spend on something that is suitable for a rifle, especially an entry-level rifle, may not be the same cost that you would spend back 10, 15 years ago.
That's a good sort of theory for somebody who's brand new to optics to sort of consider. That spending the same amount that you spent on a rifle for an optic is not crazy at all. It's actually like quite common, when, especially as you start to grade up in the feature sets within an optic.
Because why? I remember when I first got into shooting long range, I didn't know what feature sets I wanted. I knew the turret had to dial. I didn't know if I wanted mils versus MOA because that was still a huge debate back in 2005.
Whole video we already did on the Midway channel.
I didn't know what reticles I wanted. I just knew the military used mil dots, so that must be the best. I didn't know what zoom range I wanted for what type of rifle. I didn't know if weight was going to be an issue. I didn't know if the tube diameter was going to be different if I use 30 mil versus 34. So all of these, I went through a learning process using entry-level optics. I think there's a huge value to the entry-level optics.
So let's lay out the scale really quickly then. So there's an entry-level optic category. People often refer to it as budget, and it's sort of like the $299, $399 series of cost bucket, like loosely. There is a category below that, which is sort of like the department store style brand optic. We don't really consider those. What we've seen, what we've done in shooting, we sort of start at again, what we consider the entry level, being around like the $299 to $399 price bucket, and the basic feature sets that you're getting out of that are usually a dialable turret, halfway decent glass and durability, such that like in perfect, nice lighting conditions like here, you're going to be able to see your targets. Sometimes it's a fixed power optic, like your Super Sniper back in the day, and sometimes you're going to have some range of magnification.
Right.
And the reticle, you know, maybe it's a very basic reticle, basic mil dots or basic crosshair style reticle.
You can even go down to duplex. Look, for that level, it's really bare bones breaking it down. And sometimes you may lose one or two of those features, like the Super Sniper is not zoomable.
Right.
Still very
Fixed
usable.
power.
Still very usable.
Oh yeah.
Very durable, very rugged. You could see out decently, but as you progress in your shooting journey, there may be things that then you realize, oh.
Well, and that's a great point. Like, oh, I want this. And what's one of the tough things about the budget or that sort of entry-level optic is that they don't scale particularly well. Meaning you can't go oh, and now I'm going to do this with it. Oh, and now I'm going to do this. It could flex into this role or that role. It doesn't scale particularly well. So that's sort of like the budget bucket. Look, there's probably more of those that get sold than anything else.
So let's talk about the level up then.
Yeah, so sort of like that mid-tier optic. We're above the entry optic, but we haven't quite reached that premium level yet.
Yeah.
And that is like the GLX or the Vortex Vipers, or you might even be able to touch some of like the EOTech line there. They're the top end of that, I would say, but like there's like some stuff in the EOTech line or even the Trijicon line that sort of sits in there as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think a lot of us get disillusioned by Instagram posts and people kind of poo-poo on some of that tier of glass, but supremely usable.
In fact, I would go as far as saying the feature set that you find in that tier for the price that you're paying
is disproportionately high.
Yeah, it's
value.
really good.
Yeah.
It's probably the best value. So when you're looking at it purely from a value proposition, I mean, that's generally where I find the maximized level of value to feature set, because you generally have glass that, if you didn't know any better, if you weren't looking right next to a really, really high piece of glass, the glass would look sufficiently adequate. You'd be able to see out to 1,000+ yards with it with a decent level of definition, especially if what you're doing is shooting on like a golf course style range, for sure. You'll have decent tracking, decent turrets. You'll probably have parallax adjustment that's useful and usable. And like generally the optic functions pretty well. You'll usually have measurements within the crosshair that aren't half bad.
Right. So for instance, this is the GLX that Josh has been using for a long time. This is a 4-16 model. This particular one is discontinued. They have a couple follow-on generations that are currently available. But why do we still have it? Because this is one of our mule optics. We use this when we don't have a rifle with the optics outfitted yet. We put these onto QD mounts, and this just travels between new rifle to new rifle to new rifle, so we could see what the rifle is capable of doing before we spend the extra money to buy an appropriate optic for it.
We hit targets with Kevin from Full F and Auto. We hit targets on his 16-inch 5.56 Bartline build with this optic a couple of weeks ago. 1,000 yards.
And this has seen probably more than
any of these other ones. Yeah.
So because this is a non-dedicated optic. So that tells you a lot about how much use, how much mileage these things could get out of them. But Josh, that is only your mid-tier.
And now, I still think that from a value proposition of price to feature set, you're still doing pretty well when you upgrade to the first level of premium tier optics. And I think the best example of that is this guy right here.
Yeah.
That's the Primary Arms PLX. And it is what I would consider sort of budget premium.
Yeah.
It's like the most accessible premium optic. I'm sure that there are some examples from other manufacturers, but this is one that we've got right in front of us and that we've used.
Now, I mean, it is Light Optics Work manufacturer, so it's good Japanese glass.
Really robust turrets.
Very robust.
Really solid, robust turrets.
And you feel it in the weight, as Boris of Blade Runner would say, heavy is good, heavy is reliable. But you get to this level, and basically you're like, what is this? This is like the cheapest house in a really nice neighborhood, right?
Yeah, I think so. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
So you're getting a lot of that value still being in that neighborhood of optic. Now, I particularly like this one because this rifle's in 6.5 Creed, and I know the ACSS reticle is controversial to some. I have grown very fond of it. It's not the only reticle I shoot, but I've grown fond of the reticle, and so I wanted to have that particular
so you matched
reticle.
Again, you matched a very specific reticle to this specific.
Correct. Yes. And so I think sometimes, again, when we're talking about feature set, reticles vary between different manufacturers. Your Leupold reticles are different from Night Force reticles, very different from Tangent reticles, very different from my Euro reticles too. But on that note, it's kind of crazy to think that the cost of this, now it's not the same, but this, I fall in a very interesting bucket to where this could cost more than your mid-tier optic, but provide much less functions and feature sets. But this is me as a person. I like to shoot collectibles. So one more thing, just a sideways segue on why cost may not be the best way of just saying this cost this much, and so you're going to get that much. And so on this, you're still stepping into a cost proposition of getting a high value, but I feel like you're about to reverse that trend a little bit.
I think that between this and then when you step sort of like one half little baby step ahead of this, I think you run into some of the like the Razor Gen 3.
Yeah.
I would put the Leopolds, the Mark V's, for example, in sort of that same category as well, and even the Nightforce NX8 series, or the NX line. That sort of sits like that next half step forward. And I actually think that even in that bucket, like there are clarity differences in my mind between like this glass and this glass. Like this to me is clearer than this one. Not like, again, if you didn't know any better or you were just looking through one, it's no commentary on the adequacy of this, but you can see differences in perception. And I still think that these are reasonable choices, but now you're starting to hit like a $2,000 price point on optic.
On the Razor Gen 3, it's more of top of 2,000.
And then I guess that's where we're going, which is like, then you get into like Nightforce ATACR level, which is a step up from the NX line. And now suddenly, like the value plummets and the cost skyrockets, right? So you're gaining small amounts of additional things like better glass clarity or maybe slightly more robust turrets or things like that. But you're paying way more for it.
Yeah.
And it scales really poorly as you keep going.
Yeah.
Now, that's coming from somebody who puts ATACRs on things, right? So like, I still fall victim to spending the money.
So why?
Because when I look down that optic right next to this optic or that optic, I'm like,
It makes you smile.
I feel good about it.
And okay, so this is, I was joking with Josh off camera that talking about glass is kind of like guys talking about, I like this whiskey, I like this single malt, I like this wine. There's going to be a lot of people out there who tried one or two and then they go out there, this is the best.
Yeah.
Okay, outside of your Kales, outside of your Schmidt, what else do you have? Well, nothing. This comes into a really difficult conversation, and I don't want to get there, but there's a lot of sizing people up on what their experience level is on that stuff. And I am by no means an expert, but I've been around enough to see.
We at this point have basically gotten a chance to try something from every tier in every category,
Right.
Even these really expensive ones in different brands.
And I guess if we're going and unlocking the top tier optics.
Yeah, there's a level above it.
that,
There's
yeah.
a freaking level above it. You have the ATACR in like the Euroglass.
Yes.
Probably sits in that category.
So
Some people would say like, oh no, Euroglass is higher. I think it's in line with the ATACR stuff, but that's just me.
So why
That's me.
I'm the Euroglass enjoyer of this equation. Josh enjoys the ATACRs. I enjoy the Schmidt and Benders. I enjoy the Kaleses. I see the ATACRs. I see them with a very cold hue. I actually dislike that. I like warmer hued glass. It's more defined.
And what's really interesting is it's like the polar opposite for me.
Yeah.
I see the sharpest definition on the targets and the mirage and the like being able to read what's going on when I'm looking through the ATACR glass.
Yeah. Now, I mean, on the note, between ATACR, Schmidt, and Kales, I can tell you that I gain a solid like 20 minutes, half hour at dusk and dawn on top of something like this, and definitely more than something like this. So the light transmission, that little small incremental value, it helps me extend the time that I could be working with the daylight glass. That may not be a thing that is vitally important for someone shooting at 1 p.m. on a golf course style range like you were saying. But for law enforcement, for a military sniper, some of these guys,
I mean, this is where it's tough because even if you're hunting,
that's true.
Like that could be relevant for you.
Yep.
So again, there's a huge spectrum here that exists. We can put a 299 SLX optic onto some of these rifles and be digging 1,000 with it.
Right.
I think that that's really important to emphasize. I can be looking through this for a day, and halfway through the day, this looks like normal to me.
Right.
And I would be fine.
Yep.
And then if I look through, then slide over and look through a Schmidt or an ATACR or something like that, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
right. But after I've gotten like used to being behind this, it doesn't feel like I'm missing anything or lacking it. the edges aren't as clear. There's a little bit of fisheye. There's some color distortions. All of these things are true, but if you're not staring right through another one of these premium optics next to it, it's really hard to tell that difference.
So, Josh, as I look at this, we have a tangent theta. Again, compared to the 299 scope, this is worth what, 12 or 13 of those?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even comparable.
So why would someone spring money for a tangent theta?
Well, Henry, I even struggle with conceptualizing this one, because when I look through an ATACR, I'm like, this is as much as I could possibly hope for.
Right.
And this is like an extra grand or two over the ATACR. And then I was just out here looking through this with you here today. I mean, I don't have any real experience on this, and I looked through it and was like, oh wow, that's like really clean.
Yeah.
It just looks really vivid. I can see perfectly.
It was a weird phenomenon where you could see the mirage with some of these,
Yep.
but for some reason you saw less of mirage.
You could still see what the Mirage was doing, but it cut it.
Yeah.
It like sliced through the Mirage, where some of these other optics were sort of
It
like...
sounds like witchcraft.
blurred out.
I
Yeah.
swear, it's more and more sounding like we are the wine sellers, the sommeliers out there. But that's what we saw, and it is interesting as you go farther and farther what these optics can do.
Yeah.
But what you were talking about, that chart of, let's say this is the cost line.
Yeah, and your value
this
line.
is the value line.
Yeah.
It is just...
And then planes out,
Yep.
and you don't see additional value growth, or you see marginal value growth for massive increases in budget.
Yeah.
So do not feel like you have to go out and spend tons of money on optics, but you should spend some money
Yes.
on optics.
Well, if you're serious about it, it comes back
ultimately
to the value
identify
proposition.
the feature sets you need and find which tier hits those feature sets for you.
So as a very practical comparison, I will offer this. We tallied up the cost of everything here in 2024. You could buy a mid-size Ford truck with the money that is tied up here. So
Make smart decisions.
until next time, Josh.
We'll see you guys on the range.
716, this is Steel 96, 4 Vic, 8 packs, Redcon 1, green to green. How copy, over?
Steel 96, this is 716, roger, over. 16, Steel 91, 1 pack, green, over. This is 716, roger, over.
16, Steel 92, 1 Victor, 2 packs, Redcon 1, over.